Eric's.
Omar.
Right on time, like always. See, for people that say, oh, this individual does not have rhythm, I would say that they're operating at a level of syncopation that has not yet been discovered, that they're not hitting any discernible beat we can identify as of yet, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Excuse me 1 second. Who was saying that the individuals here don't have rhythm?
Oh, no. I was speaking in generalities. We are lock, step, in groove.
Because
always. That was the delay. That was the time dilation, Trex.
Okay, because Dr. Helms, his relationship with rhythm is well documented, well known.
Yeah.
I don't need to inform the audience about that if they saw his bodybuilding posing routine.
It's true.
I, on the other hand, am a classically trained percussionist. 8th grade all-district honor band.
No.
Indeed.
Way to go. Look, the Trexler, one of the great side quests of the Iron Cold, is uncovering and unearthing. Have you ever shared that in any podcast? Trex like, yes, all the time, actually.
No, but in Southwest Ohio, at a certain time, no one could play the triangle the way I could.
Look, the triangle, hold on. The triangle could get juicy. We get in them triplets, okay? When we start subdividing into 16ths, 30 seconds. Let's not laugh. He could be a beast.
I'm not laughing. I'm actually just reflecting on the fact that Trexler is basically in all ways just a more professional version of me, you know? I was, you know, in the time when I was doing it, you know, as a break dancer, this was considered not something that would go to the Olympics and have, you know, Australian people pop off on certain social media platforms, as in all of them, as some kind of joke. But it was actually something that adults were like, I don't know about this. This is up there with skateboarding as subversive behavior, you know, which is also in the Olympics. And no, I'm doing this subversive thing. You know, he's a percussionist. He didn't even say drummer. He's a percussionist. You know?
Oh, I heard.
And he's basically me plus the ability to do stats. And now he's just, you know, a better version, a more classically trained version of me.
I mean, like, name it. You want me on the marimba? You want me on the timpani? I mean, I do it all.
All right. We're really getting into, I was going to say, Helms, unlike us, we're both clearly at home. Trex is clearly, if you're watching by video, in his office. He made it a point to get to his office in order to record this because he would not allow himself to record in his domicile. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, to your point, Helms.
He's too pro. He's too pro.
And I worked too hard to get this beautiful corner office with a view of the city.
100%.
I want to show it off.
every chance you get. I want to read a few reviews before we kick off this episode. One that is sure to please 2 out of the 3 members here. I think 3 out of 3. I'm just going to read it. 5 stars. The review says it's fine. So, Helms, your reaction, that's an actual review. It's fine, like 5 stars. 5 stars.
Is it
5 out of 5 stars?
Does it give you a sense of sass, like fine, like FYNE, like, oh, that episode is fine?
No, unfortunately not. It's fine. I actually see even the way that, you know, I'm reading it puts an inflection on, you know, an emphasis on a certain emotion maybe. Like I almost am indicating when I say it's fine that there's something they're leaving out, but maybe they mean it's fine. Not fine, what you said, but just it's fine, you know? Maybe it's more a firm declaration rather than like a half-hearted statement.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It could have been, there could be a technical issue. Maybe they were saying like, it's finally here, the perfect podcast with the perfect hosts. Right. I've learned so much. I enjoy it. I laugh. Everyone in my family likes it, but they accidentally hit submit a little too soon. So it's fine. And then it just got submitted.
Voice memo recording, right? And then submit.
Oh, internet cuts out. And as we know, whenever the internet cuts out, most platforms go, right, let me autocorrect the last word and automatically post it. That's just kind of the default. Yeah.
Okay. So Helms, how do you feel about that one, man?
I'm going to choose to go with Trexler's interpretation, and I'm solid.
Okay, cool. And then we do have one more recent one. Shout out to Australia, speaking of which, because we kind of just threw some shade. So I'm glad, not at the Great Nation, but I'm glad it is from Australia. It's the most recent one. It was written several days ago. 5 stars, great for a drive home. Iron Culture is the benchmark podcast in the health, fitness, and research space. Helms, how do you feel right now?
Just drive home. I mean,
okay, thank you.
There's other places you can drive.
Great for a drive home.
So what does that imply? That it's not great for other types of drives?
Okay. Oh God, he's spiraling.
And it also implies that it's not really like appointment listening. You know, like you're not sitting down in your home studio.
Side quest. No. You got to be doing another activity, and then it passes the time. I understand. Okay. All right, guys. Let's not spiral.
Washing the dishes, driving home.
I bet it was actually RayGun who left that one. So I referenced her on the B-Girl RayGun previously, and now I brought it up again. I see what's happening here. This is a personal vendetta.
Dr. RayGun.
Is she a doctor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what?
She has a PhD.
This is the great hypocrisy that we're getting live. So you know what? Shout out to RayGun. Shout out to Dr. RayGun.
5 stars, great for a drive home. Iron Culture is the benchmark podcast in the health, fitness, and research space. The dynamic hosts, Eric and Omar, combine to present you with the right mix of nourishment and entertainment that allows you to learn something and stay awake on the long drive home, all at the same time. Eric is a great host. The one critique I have is that there isn't 2 Omars. Eric without Omar is like Waterworld without Kevin Costner and his life savings. Eric isn't the problem, but Omar is the solution. Don't read into anything that's not been said.
It gets worse.
That's the line. Come on, Helms. Eric without is like Waterworld without Kevin Costner and his life savings. I like that we've had now 3 reviews in the last month that reference Waterworld. Man, Asher483, who may or may not be Dr. RayGun, respect.
I'm not even gonna lie. Actually, I really like that review. So I can't even play the bit. That's an awesome review.
I also like that we are fully invested, pun intended, in Kevin Costner's personal finances at this point. It's like a major theme of the show.
Science communication has fallen by the wayside, and it's like, how's Kevin Costner doing? The Kevin Costner watch.
Yeah,
investigative
I'm worried
journalism.
about him.
Yeah, we need to know. Yeah,
not emotionally or spiritually, but more just financially how he's doing.
Correct.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say worried. I'm more of morbidly fascinated. Is probably what I would describe it as. Yeah,
I prefer to frame myself in a more empathetic way publicly, but to each their own.
I only know how to give conditional love, Trex, not unconditional. Yeah. Everything's a transaction for me. So that's just the way it goes.
All right.
Helms, what are we talking about today? We just crossed almost the 10 minutes of obligatory banter. What is today's episode?
Well, whether you like it or not, folks, this is probably going to turn into a much longer episode of not necessarily banter, but connection, reflection, and a nostalgic look at the future and the past, I think, if you can even look nostalgically at the future. I can, because I exist outside of space and time. But, not everyone can.
Set it up, Helms. I'm loving it. Keep going.
We have come far. We started as just 2 humble people in the night. 2 humble hunks. 2 humble hunks who connected over 2 things. One, our mutual ability to be effective as communicators off the cuff. Some might call this 2 people too lazy to write scripts for courses that they wanted to record together. But I would say, is it laziness if you don't need it? And the answer would be probably, yeah, it could have been better, Eric. And I say, hey, well, I don't want to think too deeply about that. It takes too much energy. I'm not lazy. And then connected over our shared trauma over a film that featured one powerful entity named Paimon, who we felt like we defeated with Draperism.
Yes.
Until the day that, rest in peace, in all seriousness, Dave Draper passed away.
Respect.
And now we're just left with banter and just hoping that maybe aliens or an AI apocalypse will prevent Paimon from being the dominant force in the universe because we've definitely pissed him off.
Oh, and we stand no chance, to be clear. And that's why all the references Trex has given to, being at Duke, the theology department. Not that he's a part, but just like we're trying to align ourselves with something. We're trying to shop around to find what is the best fix now that Draperism were the last true disciples, but we know that Paimon with every single day grows stronger and stronger. So I think Helms set up this episode perfectly. And now it's time to segue into the serious portion that we're at episode 300. Who would have thunk we would make it all the way to 300 episodes? I remember when I traumatized Helms and convinced him to do this podcast by showing him that film, Hereditary. And I said, hey, after where we're sobbing together saying like, there is no future, there is no hope. I said, you want to do a podcast? He's like, anything to get out of this. We both said, how long do we think it would go for? And we thought it was going to be about a year or two. And so we're closing in on year 6. And so now this is a bittersweet announcement that we've been discussing for quite some time. But this will be my last episode with Iron Culture. And I have for once, I have a prepared statement to read with this because I do think it's super necessary. I think the cult deserves it. And I love how my boy Helms set that up. And so I have this whole speech. I'll just read it, then we could talk about it. It's a little long. Just bear with me, and we'll go from there. But dear Iron Cult, thank you. Oh, that's it. That's it. I think it kind of encapsulated everything I wanted to say. I knew if I didn't prepare that I probably would be forgetting something. And
well, you definitely thanked all the people that you appreciate.
Yeah. Helms, your reaction?
I was worried that if you hadn't prepared, you might have just said thanks. So you nailed it. The formality was perfect, but not overly formal to where it felt stuffy. Or someone would go, you know what, I bet they had a falling out. That was a beef. He clearly would have said thanks more casually, but with maybe a different intonation, like thanks. But he said thank you, like clearly a lawyer wrote that, you know? So I think you killed it.
The very real Delaware lawyers. It's our equivalent of it's fine.
Yes. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. No, but in all seriousness,
so I was expecting, if I may, something a little. Have you guys ever seen that acceptance speech by, I think it was Snoop Dogg, when he got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame? He basically went on this tangent, if I'm getting the details right, where he basically said, I want to thank me for believing in me, and I want to thank me for working so hard all these years. He thanked himself about 70 times. It was awesome. I was hoping for one of those, Omar.
So, Trex, I only thanked myself 68 times in this. So, it's not long. It's a pay. In fact, it was crazy because I could have said a lot more, but I don't want to, this is a reflection episode, but also it's past, present, and future because I think the future is what I want to emphasize. I'll go ahead and read it and then we can, Helms, I would love for you to then just carry the torch. You set it up very well. Unfortunately, which is kind of crazy, it's a page. I try to keep it professional for once. There is no Paimon reference or anything like that, but it's okay. I wanted to make sure that everything was said. But without further ado, it has been an honor and privilege co-hosting Iron Culture for the last 6 years. I am immensely grateful, first to the community that has been formed under a very simple notion, a place for all lifters. The aim of Iron Culture has always been to create a space with minimal bias, self-promotion, and above all else, to be a welcoming environment for the open exchange of ideas and of people. Reading the collective comments, reviews, and interacting with some of you has solidified that this idea has in a very real way been embodied by the Iron Culture community. I cannot emphasize my gratitude to the cult. It stands in stark contrast to many of the prevailing attitudes held by the greater fitness industry. No farewell would be complete without giving a considerable amount of respect to my good friend and co-host, Dr. Eric Helms. He has steered the ship of Iron Culture over the last several years with an expert eye, conjuring up episodes that not only the cult wanted, but more importantly, what it needed. This entire podcast started as a concept for Helms to be able to deep dive into exercise science topics that deserved more attention. None of Iron Culture would be possible without him and his expertise, and I want to emphasize that. I think this core idea of providing the community with a welcoming space for clear exercise science communication has only been strengthened by our addition of Dr. Eric Trexler. Last year, I was the chief advocate for bringing him on board as a permanent co-host because I think he's exactly what the podcast needed. another dude named Eric. His unique sense of humor, brilliant mind, and expertise in exercise science made him an invaluable addition to our roster. We are privileged to have him. And now we talk about the departure. The reason for my departure is relatively simple. I'm a very private person, but the part publicly I want to share has to do with what the great Brian Whitaker said in one of our episodes. In any given scenario, you maximize given the constraints. The constraint for myself has been time, which has become more precious than ever recently. Over the last several years, I've struggled with having enough time for all the things important to me. My clothing line Rascal Apparel grew into a far larger behemoth during the pandemic than I had anticipated. It is primarily the reason why I put on pause my own personal content, while still maintaining the Iron Cult. I downplay the time commitment as I think it's very cringe when entrepreneurs boost themselves over how much they grind with running a company and how much it takes the entirety of your attention. This has necessitated sacrifices in other aspects of my life, of which Iron Culture is now one of them. It would be unfair to all the individuals that have put their faith in Rascal as a company to not give 100% to it. It'd be letting down all the people employed, all the people that believe in the vision, and it has become the place with which I'm able best to distill and express some of my core thoughts about this space. At first you see humor, but as Muhammad Ali said, jokes? There are no jokes. The truth is the funniest joke of all. This departure is not easy, but something absolutely necessary, and one that I've been thinking about for this past year as we've been discussing internally amongst the three of us. Iron Culture deserves, and I want to emphasize that, 2 hosts or more, let's leave out the possibility of the future, who can dedicate the required time to maintain and increase the quality of the show. I'm incredibly confident in the future of Iron Culture with the 2 Erics helming this journey. I think the best episodes are yet to come, truly. Thank you to all of you, and as always, long live Iron Culture. See, that was like a 5-minute speech, and that was like as short as I can make it.
I think that was awesome, man. In all seriousness, you were one of the more, now I'll say it, you're one of the most generous people I've met in this space. And I think you've given me a platform as someone who spends as much time as I feel I can in the space as a public figure when I'm doing a lot of other things behind the scenes. And the willingness to, you mentioned how I try to give people not only what they want, but also what they need. I think you have shown time and time again, whether people realize it or not, that who you choose to platform, even in things as simple as, say, a commercial for Rascal Apparel, or the messages that you try to promote subtly or more directly, you don't just do what's going to get the most eyes or the most promotion or what's going to grow you. You have always been a steward for the space. And I think that's something that I not only respect, but I've also tried to emulate. And I consider you a mentor in that way, and someone who I look up to as far as the ethics with which you approach the space, and also just not taking yourself too seriously, because fuck it, this is just lifting weights, you know? So no, you've been a friend to me, you've been a partner, and I've had a tremendous amount of not only fun doing this, but also personal growth. And I've had the opportunity to explore topics with someone who thinks very differently than me, but also thinks very deeply. And that has been something that I've benefited from personally, and I would really like to think that the cult has as well. So from like sincerely the bottom of my heart, I'm so glad you called me up and you were like, hey, let's do something. And I was like, yeah, and actually like let's include elements of history and stuff that people aren't necessarily excited about in this space, but I think maybe they could learn from. And you provided the clout and the bigger presence and the larger platform for me to be able to reach a larger audience. And that's something that I've benefited from throughout my entire career, is that other people have been generous, you being probably the most obvious and like multiple thresholds above others in terms of example of that. So I just want to say thank you for everything you've done. And I will say that, and I'll say it publicly on air so that we can't, and I won't let us edit it out so that you're forced to do it. This may be the last episode you're hosting, but it's not going to be the last episode you're going to be on iron culture.
100%. Trex, I saw it. Do you want to say something before I respond or go?
Go for it.
Damn, he's... look, Helms, we dunked on this dude. This is actually, as of recording this, it's actually Trexler. We didn't know this upon recording it. I'm doing the biggest asshole thing by recording this episode 300 and leaving. This is Trex's 1-year anniversary as part of being the cult. What the hell, man? And we discovered that today.
I brought a party hat and they said I couldn't wear it.
This is like I don't know if you guys saw the Beetlejuice sequel. I did. Another decent. It wasn't bad. And I think it gave me at least nostalgia. Someone who loved Beetlejuice. There's a character in it who at a funeral proposes to someone who doesn't actually want to marry them. It's a perfect example of that. Trex is coming in like, hey, this is me a full year. Literally on the date of recording was the day 1 year ago that we announced, hey, the new changed iron cultures. We got the third host. And Omar says, shut up. It's episode 300 and I'm out of here. I love it.
I don't take anything personally. So this is fine. I'm fine. Just like the show.
It's fine. It's fine. Hey, I also just want to acknowledge and say that means a lot, Helms, first, coming from you, everything that you said. And the way I could flip it and say, truthfully, when we first had the conversation, we did say, because I always, like, you know, I'm always thinking about like the feasibility of a project because we both know like our times collectively that they're limited in terms of the things that we could do. And we did say, like, I remember at the start, we'll do it for like 100 episodes. I remember, you remember this, and I do want you with the time that we have to do some reflection on either some episodes or like our missions, any which way you want to go, man. And also Trex for sure to jump in. But I think it's a testament to our friendship. And that is absolutely what kept me in the game, even when, let's say, you start to slowly realize there's like an erosion that happens over time, right? So like on my side, like the YouTube channel, like the main conduit with which I funnel my audience, a new audience, you know, like anything, it's like that fell by the wayside, but iron culture didn't. And so I really do think that is perhaps the best testament about our friendship or just like iron culture in general. And what I personally feel about it and how important and pivotal, like now this is us getting a little arrogant, but I do think it is for the space. And that's one of the things that I mentioned at the start about having a place for like open, clear communication that is also welcoming. And I know that, like, to shout out to Bryce Lewis, when we had kind of the original, you know, image for iron culture, it says for all lifters. And that is something that's very important for both of us, where it says history, science, culture. And so that's why we're ideologically aligned on that. And it made it so easy to do, even when, once again, juggling all these things, everything else that you would see, like as an example, like Instagram, which is like, I love participating in this space, but it's like, I haven't posted on Instagram, much less TikTok, in like the last 2 months. You know what I mean? And so I'm thrilled to, let me just say that Trex agreed, because I think not only is there a space for iron culture in the community, I think it's a necessary voice. And so it's just been phenomenal to be able to participate in it. And I like to think, Helms, as I think we both kind of feel that it's like bigger than us. You know what I mean? So I like to see it continue moving forward.
Yeah, I've disclosed some of my personal connections to fitness and how, you know, bodybuilding has particularly come at times in my life that were pivotal for, I don't want to sound too dramatic, but what feels like the connections I got through bodybuilding were life-saving at times. I don't think that's actually true, but it really helped me through certain times and helped me. I learned who I was and find a better version of myself and to cope with things that happen in my life. And it gave me experiences that I don't know that I otherwise would have. I've met people from all over the world. I live in a different country. I'm not sure I would have ever left the country outside of the one time I did in the Air Force if it hadn't been for just deciding to lift weights. And I have a lot of gratitude and the desire to pay it forward because of that. And I see iron culture as one of the vehicles by which I do that, and a very important one, because I think a lot of the evidence-based space is very useful and helpful, and it's very important to provide people an understanding of what actually it means to be evidence-based and to do things in a way that is rational and measured. But I think a huge component of that is having a sense of wonder, curiosity, and appreciation, and as cliche as it sounds, having a why underneath it all. So when you divorce science from the history or the culture, it's not that it's no longer correct, but it sort of becomes meaningless. And it's also more likely to make errors when we are potentially just reinventing a better wheel that we might have already known in the past. So, yeah, I don't think I need to get into specifics on that too much, but to me, it gave me the opportunity to kind of express an unspoken component of what was very, very important to me that I also felt that I saw in others, and which I certainly saw in you, as this is the connection they have, and we're trying to give voice to that. And also understanding that we don't have a monopoly on what it is to be the experience of a lifter and what it means. So we need to get people on who are different than us, do it for different reasons, express it in different ways. And of course, that's always going to be imperfect because we're trying to extend outside of our limited perspective. But we've had the opportunity to really think carefully about who we want to platform in each one of those realms. And we've learned things that, I mean, I gauged enough to know who's a good person to platform in most cases, but I don't know what someone's going to say if they're a Highland Games competitor, or what someone's going to say who is actually trans, who comes on to talk about their experience with bodybuilding. But I know that they're going to have a different experience than my limited experience can be. And I'm just really proud, I guess, that we were able to give that platform. And I don't, like you said, I don't want to be arrogant or big up us too much, but I think that's an important concept. And I don't think either one of us think it's about us. I think that, of course, we're going to utilize our own platform to share our thoughts when we think it's helpful. But I feel like that we've always put the mission of promoting the history, science, and culture, and education, and connectedness, and making lifting more about everybody ahead of our own personal desires. And by the way, we're having a mass sale from the 1st to the 3rd of the next month. Things will be, 30% off, Trex, or is it not that much?
30%, get it while you can.
All right. So yeah, just to kind of highlight my points.
Yeah. Trex, I do want you to jump in now. I'll just say, Helms, you know what I learned that I did not know prior to doing an episode?
No.
Speaking about who we platform. That climate change isn't real, apparently. You know, it's just one of the... Trex, have you heard of this? Like, there's like this mathematician that's taken a look at all the data with climate change, and he's not like a classically trained climate scientist.
That's good. Yeah, he hasn't learned all the bad habits.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he just stands in stark contrast to the
fresh eyes
consensus. Yeah. So that's one of the more shocking, but necessary revelations that we heard on the Iron Cult.
Yeah, I mean, the science is the science, and it is, when you train in an insular field like that, you get brainwashed by all the dogma. So if you can come at that data with fresh eyes and a new perspective, sometimes you'll see things that other people missed. So I don't recall the exact situation you're referring to, but it sounds fantastic.
I'll say very quick, Helms, and then I want you, Trex, please to jump in. I thought you were going to say, you said something like, you know what they say, and I thought you were going to say, if you do something with passion, you'll never work a day in your life.
That is actually something I want to talk about later is how, actually, you know what? I'll just do it now and interrupt Eric. This is 1 year anniversary. I remember specifically referencing...
just like come back later in like 20 minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes, Eric. Yeah.
No, okay.
This won't take that long. I specifically remember referencing Lost and how the writers wrote themselves into a corner and then basically blatantly lied in an interview that everything was planned from that way from the start towards the end, and not wanting that, and how good pieces of cinema, film, good books, everything aren't just like, let me milk this because I become a caricature of myself until there's nothing left. And I remember being surprised that we got past episode 100, being surprised that we got to episode 200. And that's when we started going, you know what, maybe the swan song, maybe the finish is the documentary. And this is an excellent example of just how generous and committed you were as a man who doesn't like to travel, doesn't necessarily adapt to travel as well as the average person, and who had so much going on at the times we were doing it that you had to work a lot while we were traveling you were incredibly committed, professional, showed up, stayed the course, and made those things happen. They physically, financially could not have happened, the recording of the documentary. And some of the most poignant experiences I've had as a lifter, getting to see Ireland's strongest woman lift the woman's stone that hadn't been lifted in 150 years, after getting to document me having the crazy opportunity, which I reflected on, I still reflect on, as like, whoa, coaching at the inaugural Sheffield, which is kind of the symbol of the culmination of powerlifting become a far more legitimate sport than you or I ever anticipated. And looking out, it would look like a rock concert on stage while I'm coaching. Having that happen in the span of several weeks is because of you. That was able to happen. And then meeting Ronnie Coleman was because of you and the connections you had and what we were able to do. And we didn't know if it was going to happen. So like, these are things that if you had gone back in time and been like, hey, I want you to tell 2005 Eric, who's thinking like, oh man, it'd be really cool to have an actual powerlifting client, not just some clients who are interested in strength who I'm forcing to do a powerlifting program even though they don't want to. And also, by the way, you know how you were just watching the Olympia and Ronnie win his last one. You're going to get to meet him at some point in the future. I would have said no way. So I just have so much appreciation for that. A huge thank you. And I'm also really excited for the future because I'm not going to give any kind of timeline as to when the documentary is going to get released, but let's just say that it is currently being edited. And I think it's going to be something quite cool. And we're looking forward to that in the future. Again, sometime in the year 20, insert year here, that's going to come out. But that's all I can commit to.
Trex, I want you to give your commentary. The only response I'll say to Helms is reflecting on that, you know, how I feel when you do something with passion, you never work a day in your life.
All right, Omar. You know, when Helms was laying a beautiful bouquet of flowers at your feet, he talked about your generosity. And I want to echo that. I'm going to paint a picture here. I was a newlywed on a winter vacation with my new bride, going to a cabin, you know, a nice cozy winter cabin, snowed in, that kind of deal. A fledgling new marriage, highly vulnerable. Will it work? We don't know. And, well, you know, we get settled in for the night, and it's one of those, it's an Airbnb. The TV has all the different accounts for the streaming services set up. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I think I see a little History Channel icon. So I pull that up and I bring up on the History Channel, on the big screen, me and Omar chatting it up about carnivore diets. My wife, my new bride, so impressed. She has never looked at me the same way again. And I believe I owe my marriage to Omar. The level of respect that brought me, and admiration in my own home. But on a serious note, Omar, as you mentioned, you really championed the cause of bringing me into the fold with Iron Culture to what I assume was severe resistance from Eric Helms. But no, I mean, you really were extremely proactive about initiating that. And you told me, hey, I like what you're doing, kid, but you're not reaching enough people. And you would make sense here. We'd love to have you. It would be a better use of what you do. And I think we'd have a good time with it. And you were very selfless to bring me onto a show and a platform that was already built, you know, already systems were in place, the structure was there, the audience was there, and in an industry where scarcity is commonly perceived, you know, people guard that stuff very aggressively. And you're like, here, take my show by all means. And the way that you proactively welcomed me in was an extremely generous thing. Now, what was not generous was taking over my 1-year anniversary party. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to one-up you, the one-upper.
Oh, no.
And I'm going to make what I believe to be the biggest announcement of the night. In the spirit of generosity, I, Dr. Eric Trexler, am formally and officially, as an act of generosity, recognizing all pre-Trex episodes of Iron Culture as part of the official Iron Culture canon in my personal record book and personal archives from this point forward, to commemorate your time spent in the Iron Culture universe as a full-time host, and to get ahead of the nasty allegations that I forced you out and that this was a coup.
Trex, Helms, that might be the most generous thing said of the night.
Well, until I'm about to make an announcement. So as just in the spirit of generous announcements, and this has nothing to do with being the most generous or humble person here, although I have heard people say that about me. I'm going to acknowledge that most likely all of the comments that have been left on YouTube about one of the Erics not being as good as the other were probably about me. And Trexler, I'm so glad we've had you. When Omar originally brought up the idea, he finished the sentence and he said, "Eric, what do you think?" And he heard a dial tone. And then he was like, "Does Eric have a house phone?" But then he realized that I probably was not as open to the idea as he anticipated. Over the next 2 months of me yelling at him and hanging up on him, I eventually said, okay, we can bring him on as an intern, an unpaid intern. In fact, he has to pay us to be an intern. And Omar shut that down. But sometime after the initially bringing that up in the, I think, episode 10, by the time we got to episode 240, I was on board with it. And that's just another example of how you are a better person than me. You're more open-minded, you're more generous, and you are the better Eric. And I'll say that on the record, just to show that I'm actually the better Eric, at least spiritually.
Omar, you got to take the wheel. This is becoming a circular festival of generosity, and it is starting to feel insincere, I must say.
Wow. From
it's getting a little. We're almost jumping the shark with the announcements and the false humility. So so where do we go from here? I mean, Omar, I think it's to be completely serious, I owe you a debt of gratitude for bringing me into the fold with Iron Culture. And of course, I owe that to the good Dr. Helms as well, the better Eric, the more handsome Eric, the better dancer Eric. And yeah, it will be an honor to have you back as frequently as we can convince you to be on the show and to speak to the cult, man. But yeah, where do we want to go from here with this reflection and whatnot?
So I have to acknowledge a few things, and then we could do some reflection. Maybe I'll let Helms kick that off of like just over the last, because it has been 6 years, maybe not like highlights, but just some things that are coming to top of the mind for you. First, I just want to say, Trexler, much respect for everything that you said, but really the way that I looked at it truly is that it was for the betterment of the cult. And the underlying thing that kind of wasn't discussed in the statement that I read is that, you know, it also makes sense for me to leave in the sense that I believe firmly in the cult, and you have to invest a certain amount of time in order to produce a good episode. And that's why with the addition of Trexler, and I think the direction, not that it should go in, but I think with both of you collectively, your expertise and then your ability to, you know, communicate it to a general audience, I think it's essentially unparalleled. And so I think that's really the strength. And so having someone else that has the necessary time and expertise to do so, to me, was a no-brainer, as we kind of saw, and that's why I said Helms. You know, around episode 100, which would only be for us, that's like 2020 pandemic or thereabouts. It's like peak Omar, where I'm still putting out some content. The work commitment isn't that high, so not really thinking too far in the future, but we thought we would do it for 100 episodes. But that we had made it, and this is fortuitous, with bringing Trexler on board to the point where there could be someone else to co-host with Helms is phenomenal, because to me, it gives me a lot of anticipation towards the future and the episodes that could be. And I just think there's so much more juice. Like myself and Helms have had these internal conversations of like, well, how long can we do this for? When will we stop doing it? We'd stop doing it when it felt, to your point, Trex, either insincere or we're regurgitating certain things. And I certainly don't think it's at that point. And I don't think either of you will reach the point So people talk always about jumping the shark. I like how it's like a common now pop culture reference. It's from an episode with the Fonz where where he jumps over a shark. Like just this, it was just an outlandish concept for an episode. He went from the cool guy in the show to like, what is it with the leather jacket? And he's like, hey, to what is going on in this episode? This no longer resembles any semblance of reality. And so I think that's the very cool part, that it's kind of like PBS style or any like public access where there are no advertisements besides the mass sale that's happening from the 1st to the 3rd, 30% off.
Get it while I can.
So the positive part is that there's probably no financial interest leading to a bias in that sense within the podcast. So it's free from that, which is really good, because then you always have an angle. You know, let's say like you start an evidence base and no shade thrown at anyone whatsoever. Then you start maybe like a supplement company. Then at the start, you're always like mentioning the supplement company, and then you start bringing on guests that are going to like confirm essentially what you want to talk about that supplement company, like whatever, right? That's just one small example. I like how it has been untethered to any obligation, and I like that. I think with you guys like both being part of Mass, that's a natural way to integrate something, and actually that makes sense. And the way that I'd phrase it for both of you, it's like, you know, Iron Culture, it doing well should be in your best financial interest. Where I think it was fantastic for us to essentially do it as a passion project, where we never asked and we never would for people to like financially contribute, but we're paying a couple $100 a month to put out this information. And normally then, you know, even if you're not like a marketer, but you're aware of like top of the funnel, you're growing an audience, then you segue once again to coaching, this and that. I find it remarkable that Iron Culture has essentially been able to stay bullshit free. You have to endure our bullshit, our own personal. That's why I said it's like public access, where the negative part about public access, they remind you that it's free and that they don't have sponsors, which takes the exact same amount of time as reading the sponsors. But there is a notable difference between the two. And so that's something that I did enjoy. And I just want to take pause where you could only have myself and Helms like drop money into this thing and not be like, well, how do we turn this into something profitable? It's like, well, let's just keep doing it, is kind of the way that we did it. And again, now we're bigging up ourselves. But I think maybe for yourself, Helms, if you want, because I think you can remember lucidly like some of the episodes, moments. It's been 6 years. You've been writing it. There you go. Yeah, just kick it off, man.
Yeah. Well, first off, I completely agree with everything you said. I think that's accurate framing. And I was reflecting back to in 2019 when I competed, and we went all around like Sacramento. Like we've interviewed some people, boys. Sacktown boys, 100%. We've interviewed some people on Iron Culture that, like, frankly, like I was nervous interviewing them because they had such significance in like the culture and the history of the culture. Like Randall Strawson, who people might not be aware of. We got to do, you know, a live interview with him. And he's the photographer behind Iron Man, Iron Mind and Milo Magazine, and has been doing the damn thing since, I want to say, the late 80s. And some of the most iconic pictures that you might see hung in gyms of weightlifters or strongman competitors, he was there, like literally on the front line. I remember particularly being very nervous when we had Brian Whitaker on, because he's someone, even though I actually met him in person in 2009 and I have communicated with him, he's just someone who I've looked up to so much in natural bodybuilding. You know, the year he won both WNBF Worlds as well as the IFPA, at the time, the Yorton Cup, which is now the OCB Yorton Cup. And he is, like, you know, people who've been following recently, we had a discussion where we crossed over with the 3DMJ podcast, and myself, Brian Miner, and Alberto were talking about the greatest natural bodybuilders of all time in terms of their physique. He wasn't necessarily, we was in the conversation, but he wasn't on that list, because what he's accomplished is so much about maximizing within his constraints and the conditioning standard he's able to achieve with good enough proportion and muscularity and the consistency. His perspective as someone who also has a PhD in economics, like I just have so much respect for him that it freaked me out just to interview him. And that was pretty cool that we were able to do that. And then on the coaching side, Dan John, who we had really early on, along with Susie and Matt Hartwig-Gary, who are both mentors to me. And Dan John doesn't know it, but I've always considered him a mentor. We got to, when I met him in person in, I want to say, Norway in 2015 or 2016, I can't remember, I tried to sheepishly express to him, like, dude, I've read your stuff and it made a huge impact on the way I work with people. a lot of the current crop of fitness enthusiasts who would probably have very meaningful experiences being exposed to them, I don't know that they would get that opportunity if we hadn't done that. So it was really like, I didn't want to mess it up. Like those are the podcast episodes that really stand out to me, where we're sitting down and talking to people who were formative for some of the best aspects of the fitness industry, at least in their era, and potentially planting seeds that other people would carry those philosophies forward. When we got to talk to them, it made me, I was nervous, you know, and I'm glad that I had someone to sit side saddle with in those interviews. And there were times where I chose to just shut up and let you go, and you crushed it every time and provided that confidence as a duo. So those are some really cool aspects of it. I love that we kicked things off with looking at the history. You know, that's not the flashiest way to do it. Like if we'd kicked things off with our hypertrophy roundtable, which was one of our most listened to episodes, but it came when we were already like 5 or 6 episodes deep, then, you know, that probably wouldn't have been the smart thing to do, but it wasn't the right thing to do, you know? So I look back at some of these interviews and thinking about how we've had, like, for example, we had the rest in peace, late great John Meadows on, along with Chris Bumstead, you know, an Olympian, a multi-time Olympian now.
Chris said he was listening to our podcast. That's how we got him on.
You saw that, you reached out to him, and then here we are. You know, that was really cool. And we've had Mitchell Hooper, you know, world's strongest man on. We've had multiple IPF, you know, world champions, from Russ Orhe to Jess Bittner to Taylor Atwood to Austin Perkins to the strongest man alive in powerlifting, Jesus Olivares. So like, those are experiences that that couldn't have happened, you know, without you. And those are the ones that stand out in my mind, is when we got to have these moments for me where I had to like pinch myself. I'm like, what? Like, I know, I don't like know these people, but that I'm getting to actually interact with them are things that, you know, for lack of a better word, like I was fanboying big time. And I felt a sense of responsibility in those opportunities to really try to share something that was, you know, essential to the cult. And yeah, so when I look back on stuff like that, those are the moments that really stand out to me. And of course, like, we've had some amazing, you know, science communicators as well, and researchers who people probably wouldn't be aware of, who are doing incredible work. And one thing I'm really excited about for the future, so I'm going to start with a reflection, I'm going to end with the future, is that I love that Trex is a much more of a Renaissance man than I am in terms of his interests. You know, like, everything I do is, it might seem like, oh man, just strength sport. It does, like, oh, he does like 4 different strength sports, and he researches strength sport and bodybuilding, and he competes. But yeah, let's be honest. Like, I do everything in the most narrow place possible, right? So I'm interested in history, but it's really only the history of lifting. And you have broader research interests that extend into like evolutionary biology, and also you're interested in the history of science, which I think complements my amateur interest in the history of lifting. And of course, we're always going to have over there on Dat Dare Obelisk, we got Dr. Connor Heffernan whenever we need the help of a real historian. So no, I'm excited for the future, even though I'm also honestly just sad that you're leaving, Omar. But I also know that was something that was going to come, and we had planned for it from the start. And I am happy for you that you're getting to simplify your life and focus on the things that are making the most meaning for you and where it needs to be, because ultimately that's what I want for you. So yeah.
Helms, I will say that, so within the cult, we've known, which is kind of funny, for like almost 6 months, I forget how long, like where I finally came to that resolution. Even that was tough for me, because talking about the beginning of Iron Culture, I remember what a breath of fresh air it felt like when we first kind of had that conversation, where I wanted to be able to do a deep dive with you. I thought you were someone that absolutely deserved to have a podcast, but also the general kind of space at the time on YouTube was a little bit less science inclined. And so for myself, like producing content on YouTube, it was fun. I love it and thoroughly enjoy it. There's only so much you could go in depth over a 10-minute video, and there needed to be a place. And I saw like the numerous roundtables, Helms was on, or like whatever. I'm like, what if there was just like a free open discussion where it was a weekly kind of format that we could do these sorts of things? And so for me, it was incredibly refreshing, especially to your point, Helms, where we did like history, science, culture, but also I keep saying unrestricted only because like if we were beholden to trends, I don't think we ever would have gotten the episodes that, in my personal opinion, and you would agree with this, and I do liken us to being artists because we are carefully shaping kind of the episodes that we put out or what we want to talk about. The algorithm, I'm not trying to get back in this conversation, but just the idea, you'll see what you quickly get rewarded with. So like a hypertrophy roundtable, if you have just like 8 of those bad boys like over a year, if you frame it in an adversarial format like before, where it's verse or whatever the case, you will quickly devolve into something that is much further from your mission statement. So I think one of the aspects that I'm most proud of is that we always kept true to that. And I knew with Helms that would never be an issue, which is why it was such an easy choice to do it with him, and why it was a natural emphasis on natural place for us to do these things, though, in all seriousness. And that's why I'm curious with the cult, and we've had many conversations like, what some of their favorite episodes are, because for us, there are, to your point, some of like the Dan John for yourself. I was thinking about what was Mike Zordos's like mentor, Jan Pika? Is it?
Jan Pika, who talked about strength and conditioning. Also, John Kiley, who came on.
John Kiley, right.
He had a lot of formulative thoughts for me to even dive into autoregulation as a career path in academia.
Yeah, just many different examples, but it's like, again, if we're only looking at metrics, it's like, okay, you want to do this, you want to do that, but you need to be fundamentally satisfied with what you're putting out. And also, you need to think about what you think the audience really needs to hear, because a portion, and not the Dare Iron Cult, you're quite different, as proven by the comments. I love some of the comments, I'll say, with some episodes where I'm like, who's going to respond to this? I'm joking, but some are like 8 paragraphs long. I'm like, oh, we got a dedicated fan base. Or Trex was joking about like, we'll do an episode, and all they'll hear is pain don't hurt much. I'm joking. And it's like, here goes, the DMs are open again. Or the reviews that we see, I will say, nothing but respect. It's a testament to them. And that's why I kind of really want to like focus it on the audience that we've been able to build, and we're very grateful for that. The reviews, like always, that's why I liked reading the reviews, because they'd be peppered, Trex, with like references to previous episodes. They speak the same language. There's a common through thread of just being an Iron Cult enthusiast, and that to me, really, I just want to emphasize that one more time before I give it over to you, Trex man, that I think it's remarkable. And myself and Helms, we've been in the space. You could kind of get like a little jaded, a little disenfranchised, not by like I believe fundamentally in the people, like I'm a people first person, but just like some people in either like positions of power or like what it does to them. I'll just say very briefly, this is like, it's going to seem like a random story, but there's a point. I met like, I guess you could call him, I was in New York recently, and I met like a relatively prominent podcast host, somewhat like that does sometimes delve into fitness, more general. Let's call them like a Joe Rogan diet version, but they seem more science forward is the way they present. It doesn't matter. But just like from interacting with this individual, I think if one of their listeners was to come up with them, the level of arrogance, how conceited they were, just everything, like what they think that they do, it is just an icky feeling interacting with someone like that in person. And I want to give quickly, and I'll give you over to you, Trex. Like I think of my boy as example, Ben Escrow, right? Elemental Formulations, my buddy, where I think the space almost like naturally excludes or discourages folks that don't have an ego about them, if that makes sense. Where it's like, I think there's a lot, point is what we're talking about with Iron Culture, we've tried to bring in a lot of people that don't have that spotlight that people in quotations wouldn't necessarily be interested in. And that's super important, because it is a game of, oh, how much clout do you have? Like, oh, what are you talking about? Are you relevant right now? Like this study. And once you get into that conversation or that mindset, it could be incredibly toxic. So I'm proud of Helms, the direction we went in, the cult themselves for being open, because guess what? You come in trying to get stronger, Trex, and then we hit you with like, Connor Heffernan, we're talking about the history of, Arthur Saxon or like whoever, right? For like an episode. So just like something you wouldn't expect, but maybe you develop an appreciation for.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I don't want to, restate what Helms already so eloquently stated, but I think that this is a special platform and a special audience in the sense that, like you said, Omar, the Iron Cult gives us the latitude and the freedom and the trust that we are not going to blatantly waste their time once a week on, insert date here. I think it's nice to be able to spread our wings a little bit and get comfortable and kind of explore some other niche topics that aren't really getting discussed on a lot of other fitness-oriented podcasts. And I would like to believe that one of our kind of guiding principles is that when we are diving into some of these niches, we can at least promise with full sincerity that we believe that it's either going to be highly interesting or highly useful. Now, interesting is subjective. It's going to hit with some people, miss with others. But we are not going to sign up as hosts for a total snooze fest or for something that we don't think is valuable, like you said, Omar, just because it's like, well, if we got this person on the show, maybe it'd be good for us, right? I think that long before I entered the picture, Iron Culture was cultivated with integrity and with a pretty clear mission. And I hope to be part of carrying that tradition forward. And I think the reason that we have such a solid audience is because of the integrity and the vision with which that foundation was laid. So Omar, you are going to be dearly missed as a regular fixture. You will continue to be, I insist, an irregular fixture. We're gonna talk you into it as much as we can, but in your honor, in the memory of our dearly departed Omar, Helms and I know that we have a big task of making sure that we carry that spirit and vision forward, and that we do it justice, and that we come through for the cult.
Trex, nothing but respect. I want you guys now, maybe with the time here. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about the future? I don't know what details, if any, you want to share, but I do think one part that is interesting, while we have delved now into a wide variety of different topics in Iron Culture's history, I do think it is an unusually powerful combination, the duo that are the Erics, the fact both PhDs, both like clear science communicators, your ability to, discuss any topic in the space and do it like no other. I think it's just an uncommonly strong. So I'll put it this way. I think every single history episode I've been about, right? Like we've all been about, or like Connor, and they still should remain a fixture. But I just think in almost the current climate that we find ourselves in the fitness industry, I'm not sure if either of you agree with this, it becomes more important than ever just to have a clear communication. And so I would, like, as someone that is an enthusiast of the cult, I would like to see that become even perhaps a little bit more prominent, just because not everyone can do it. Like it's just, it's a rarefied skill set, and then you multiply it by 2, come on.
Well, Omar, we've been practicing. I'll tell you that much. And I almost want to do a huge Allen Iverson thing, but I won't. I'm going to prevent my ADHD from taking over. The mass office hours was an idea that Dr. Trexler here spearheaded when we were trying to provide more interaction to people who are interested in the type of stuff that we cover in mass, explaining in practical terms how to apply science to actually translate it into what you would do in the gym or the kitchen. And we've been doing that live on YouTube weekly. Trex is always there. And then it's one of us who, myself, Zerdos, or Dr. Colenso Semple, Lauren, we jump in with him. And he's been holding that down on a weekly basis. And I've been on, I guess it'd be 1/3 of those-ish, based upon the rotating schedule. So we've been getting this practice. And I have to say, we joke about how we see each other like almost every day and we hate it. I like it. I'm not going to lie. So it's actually a lot of fun. I think we complement each other well. And I'm looking forward to being able to probably integrate those two things. We haven't really discussed what that looks like, exactly how it's going to happen. How do we preserve all the elements of Iron Culture while also preserving all the elements of mass office hours? And of course, we're going to have to talk to Lauren and Mike about it. But I think moving forward, I don't know. I do think the vast majority of iron culture listeners would appreciate and value all of the things that we talk about on Mass Office Hours. And it's a much smaller audience because it's only been around. I think we just hit our 1 year, right, Trex?
That is correct.
Yeah. So we've done that for now. Like we just had our 53rd episode or whatever. So we've been doing the Office Hours for a year, which is relatively new compared to Iron Culture and relatively new compared to Mass, which started in 2017. But I think that would be a really natural next step since it's, now it's two people who are, half of them is always there and the other person is there 1/3 of the time anyway. So,
yeah. I think what Eric Helms, the good Dr. Helms, is trying to say is that we are live streamers now. We do that live stream every Wednesday, and I look forward to mixing it up with some stunts to see if we can get the algorithm moving in our favor. So maybe I'll do one of those where I stay awake for 72 hours or, do some other kind of wacky thing that may kill me. Who knows? But definitely stunts will be in the near future for that. I don't know if any of the stunts and other hijinks are going to make it over to the Iron Culture feed. But no, I do think that it's intuitive to kind of merge those concepts in some way. We haven't sorted out any details on that. But I think what I would say is the most important thing for the Iron Cult to know is that there will be no dramatic revision of the mission statement or vision of what we're doing here. It's just because it's me and Helms, it doesn't mean that we're going to ditch the practical elements of lifting, ditch the cultural elements of lifting, or have any less of a showcase on the historical elements of lifting. I will acknowledge, with me having more screen time, I may dive more into some of the fun historical elements of statistics and science, only when it's valuable and interesting. I do have quite a few little anecdotes in my back pocket dating back to the late 1800s, so I'm sure people are going to love those. But yeah, the overall tone, I believe, of the show will survive, will continue, and we hope that it's onward and upward from here with more inclusion of excellent guests, including our dear friends from Mass, Drs. Zordos and Dr. Colenso Semple, but certainly many, many more. So I wouldn't expect a massive jerk of the steering wheel in a totally different direction. Of course, it's hard to, I might even say impossible to replace Omar. So there will be a tangible hole in our hearts, very palpable and detectable. And so I'm not going to say that it will be hitting exactly the same notes in terms of tone and presentation, but our goal is to faithfully carry forward that vision and to do justice to what Omar co-created and to what the beautiful Iron Cult expects and deserves.
Look at this guy. He is ready, Helms. This prime time, the co-host. Okay, because really, we were a trifecta for a year, but he's saddling right up. Phew, he crushed that.
Yeah, I'm a good speaker, but I'm not eloquent. I say things and it comes across that I can give a veneer of confidence and semi-likability, and it works. But Trex is crisp. It's clean. It's error-free.
It's almost surgical in its
well said, surgical.
Approach. Mm-hmm. As if it was created in a lab.
I fully intend for my second go-around, my second career to be in politics.
Nice.
And I'm just glad that I haven't spent the last 10 years speaking into a microphone with all sorts of things that can be held against me in the future. I'm very glad about that. But yeah, I appreciate it. I think Helms is better at talking science on the fly than I am. But, I have been accused of, being able to put together a polished set of sentences that may or may not be machine-like, and who knows what's going on behind the surface. You never know.
I love it. I think that also the humor, I think, has been a good addition.
Yes.
I think you and I, Omar, I wouldn't say we're wet in our humor, but we're not quite as dry as the good Dr. Trexler. We're perhaps just a little more, aloof and silly at times, and our sarcasm is very obvious. But I appreciate the cutting wit that Trexler brings. So it's going to be it's not going to be the same exact flavor, but I think people are going to go, you know what? I liked when there was salt in there, but I like caramel. It's not salted caramel, but it's something else, and I'm open to it. And of course, occasionally we're going to get that little salt shaker out and shake it like a salt shaker and bring a little more back on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on that note, I did drop a little dry sarcasm Easter egg in the most recent office hours. I talked about, I teased at some tips I was going to give on how to incorporate lengthened partials into your board pressing. So
I laughed out loud when that happened, even though Zerdos didn't pick up on it when I was listening.
He completely missed it, but the chat got it. And I tell you what, that is the Iron Cult and the office hours chat. They are just sharp. Right there, locked in with us. These are sharp people.
Simpatico.
These are our people. And I think that's the part that makes me very confident once again in the future. I think it is a unique set of skills that, quite frankly, you need to manage the cult, to commandeer it. And I think both of you have it. Like Helms obviously has it. And I think that's why, for me, Trex was an obvious choice. First pilot tested on the now infamous, immortalized Pain Science Roundtable. Sometimes saying nothing is more than saying anything, if you think about it, Trex, right? But all seriousness, it was just, for us, it worked out in our favor. Like I said, that you're available to join Iron Culture, and I view it, and that's like, I emphasize it only because, as Helms knows, visibility is seen as being the exact same as credibility in our space. So the more notable you are as a public figure, the more trustworthy you're seen in ways, right? Like, obviously. But all that to say that I think, therefore, Trex can be seen as being underrated, and that's why we're giving him like his proper flowers. And just without calling out any names, forget like the evidence-based, but let's just say the greater fitness community, there's an overemphasis on not even certain people, but certain things or attributes that individuals look for. And that's why both of us, myself and Helms, knowing what the real deal is, we're like, oh, like this is Trex. And that's why we were very happy for him to join. And that's why all of us, when we know and we distill down what is Iron Culture, what should it be about, it makes me extremely confident and excited for the future. And yes, I will be returning for some episodes. The episode, Helms, that we're going to do, that every single person requested, us interviewing, yes, I'm going to reveal it, Joe Rogan again. He's leaving his bunker, limited time, limited engagement, limited brain cells, to be perfectly fair. I think the DMT just like absolutely eroded any last like drops that he had, but like, hey, we're grateful for the opportunity, you know, or something.
Yeah. And for I think the value he provides, it's good that you don't need a ton of those, you know, like maybe his analysis of whether or not a crocodile could, that one we'll probably avoid in the podcast. But I think is it, you know, just because I don't want to, you know, platform certain ideas, but I am very curious as to his current thoughts on crocodile versus bear in a cage match specifically.
The cage, the octagon, the UFC outfit. It's like, we've moved from.
Is there any water in the cage?
And that I think is going to be the deciding factor. But I think we're going to keep that under wraps so that there's still value for the listener when they listen to that. Like you said, we don't want to do things that are just going to be sensationalist or big up big names. The real reason we would do an episode with Joe Rogan is to answer those burning questions we all have.
That we want to know. Yeah, his speculation is second to none. And I was going to go on a tangent. I won't. But I will say that Helms, you in particular, man, being the co-captain for so many years, is there anything you kind of want to reflect back on? Because I think you both have done a tremendous job kind of indicating what the future holds. This has been just a fantastic episode to participate in. It reminds me, as always, and emphasizes why I've enjoyed all these years doing these episodes where it's kind of like, it's the friendships. What did Ed Cohn say many moons ago? He's like, he said that during an interview, I think it was on Mark Bell's channel, where he said it wasn't the lifts I remember, it's the friends I made along the way. It's another, if you do something with passion, you'll never butt it, but it is true.
It's true,
yeah, but it is true. Is there something, anything that you want to reflect back on, because you're the fellow steward of those, what I'd call Trex, at first, lost years, as not recognized by Trex, but now we have completely had they're in Ohio. They're now valid. In one of the swing states, they're one of the most important battlegrounds. They've been added as canon.
Yes. And North Carolina.
No,
that's
thank
true.
You. And we're adding North.
Both battlegrounds. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. This Cali boy knows it's always going to go the same way. So, yeah, no, they're actually, I think I talked about some of the guests, which I felt a sense of reverence and responsibility and just fanboying when we brought them on. Another thing that I look back on fondly is how well we did sustaining bits for years. Like, obviously, Danny Lennon as potentially
ruined his career.
Yeah, you know what? And we also recently resurrected it. For those who've been listening to the podcast, we've had him a few times on as we've done our Sports Nutrition Association, Sigma Nutrition, Iron Culture crossover episodes. But no, that was amazing. I think the time there also, I remember multiple times where I did not have the ability to speak because of something you said, a joke you made, and you had to just keep going because I needed to mute myself. And one of the times that happened, not because of you, is when we had been joking about the Irish potato famine, and Connor Heffernan, which is very borderline unacceptable, by the way.
It's unacceptable.
It is,
Connor's
and we probably should stop. But Connor, he joined with us and made it so that we weren't being incredibly unsensitive by being, an Irishman himself. He came on with a filter of his head as a potato for the first 5 minutes, and I was unable to speak for that entire 5 minutes until he let go of the filter because it surprised me so much. That was so some of the, I guess what I'm saying is some of the bits are dear and near to my heart, and I remember them, and especially some of the ones that people had to just grudgingly accept eventually because they were funny to us, rather not everyone else was. Like we said, this is all for other people, not just ourselves.
Wait, I'll say it very quickly, where it's Stuck Together, where we got the name of this film wrong, right? There's many, like I won't go down every single one, but like Paimon, Draperism, throwing out the baby with the bathwater, Danny Lennon absolutely being a serial killer, and other people calling into question his character, jokingly, but then semi-seriously. Yeah, many ones. And then I do think, kind of as an example, it was very real. I just want to emphasize that, the potato famine, that I feel that some of the episodes, when we finally put them all into the catalog, into the great library, the Trex, it's kind of going to be like any episode from any time period before, where like all these jokes are hilarious. And then you show someone else who's like the next generation, and they're listening and like, no. And we're just going to realize, oh, okay, we should have excised that. But it shows a moment in time. And I do like, to your point, Helms, how we can maintain, we basically, one of the things that I personally like to do is say something that isn't necessarily funny to anyone, but keep emphasizing it until it becomes funny to them, and then see how long you can keep it, and then make it unfunny again. If that makes it, where it's just like, it at first it's unwelcome, then everyone loves it, and then it's overstayed its welcome, and then it's perfect.
The meta element of that is what appeals, and as an irreverent person with a sense of humor that is largely dependent upon my own personal enjoyment, sometimes at the expense of other people, that little hint of sadism in my character, I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, I will say it was funny a few times, Trex, where we had guests and we'd be cracking jokes, and obviously, they might not get the references, which is totally fine. But also we'd say something and someone's like, yeah, I just want to keep talking, but we're in a bit. And that is something I'll say what's great, like Trex, about yourself. With your humor, I find you very funny. That's like an unspoken element that I think some people in general, not like listeners of Iron Culture, but they're like, all right, I want to learn about hypertrophy, that even they don't necessarily understand, in the sense that, you think you want just straight ahead information, and maybe like for some people 100% that is the case. But if it is exactly like just reading an article, then it is almost, I would say, from an auditory perspective versus reading it, almost like an inferior experience. So having a bit of personality, to me at least, goes a long way, and both of you have that. That's why I enjoyed whenever, Trex, you're on a podcast, same idea with you, Helms. And I'm someone, like as an example, I kind of low-key prefer, if I want the information, just to read the latest article in mass, right, as an example. But then I'll listen to the podcast because it's completely different, right? There's that human element that's inside of it, and then it makes it enjoyable.
Yeah, people who listen.
I hope
sorry,
that
go
we
ahead.
can. Yeah, I was just going to say, I hope we can kind of continue that tradition and carry it forward. But I was just Googling most comical famines, and nothing came up.
Nothing.
So,
yeah, that one was
even the
who'd have
potato
thought?
one. I don't know.
Yeah. That will be excised. Like that one immediately as soon as we started, I was like, I don't no. But it's like it's too far. And the episode was released, and then Connor kind of bless his heart, bless his soul. Brought the potato kind of image, and so it kind of like resurrected it. But honestly, if I'm being serious, like this is kind of like episode.
It's insensitive.
It's it's one that I wish like we never said for sure. But this is an example where we've done the episodes, and I think the Iron Culture understands that, and sometimes with humor, we did not Kramer ourselves. Whatever the comedian. But it's one of those things where sometimes you're reaching and sometimes you reach a little too far. Icarus. Yep. Yeah, you're reaching for that sun and you just get the wings melt.
Yeah, we got a little burned. And the good news is
we just block anyone that brings it up. So it's just like
exactly right.
And that was before me, so it won't impact my political career.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So we're good to go.
Yeah. But no, let's guys, let's bring it full circle. Is there anything either of you, because I hate then it's Trexler's 1 year anniversary here. I always view these as being collaborative. I'll say like my closing piece when I close it out, but anything to either go backwards or forwards on.
No, I think it's just important to restate that Helms and me and the Iron Cult owe you a major debt of gratitude for everything you've put in to this show, which predates COVID all the way back into February of 2019. I don't even remember what I was doing in February of 2019. I'm pretty sure, that was like a couple months after I finished my PhD. I mean, thinking
You're
back,
in 20s, the world was ahead of you.
Yeah, I mean, life was very different, and it was a cold world until Iron Culture came along. So, no, I mean, like, seriously, I think you should be proud of the 300 episodes that you've put in. I'm happy for you that you are in a position where you're able to kind of restructure your time commitments in a way that is most compatible with what you want life to look like at this stage in your life. I wish you all of the best. I hope that you'll come back often. And I appreciate you for bringing me into the fold and for, putting Iron Culture in a good place as you send it off into the future.
Trex, my guy. It's been extremely meaningful. And like I said, the connections made along the way is the cherry on top.
Omar, you know how I feel about you, and you know how much appreciation I've had through some of the conversations we've had in private. And let me just say, like, that is something, so those moments and what they represent and our friendship is something I will continue to cherish. And I'm only slightly sad because I know that we're still going to be boys, even though we're not necessarily getting to do the damn thing together anymore. And that's something that I'm very fortunate that I have in my life. And yeah, man, just thank you for everything you've done, because you have done a lot. You've done a lot for Iron Culture. I would not be here without you. And many of the things that I've gotten to experience, which I personally cherish, I would not have been able to do without you. So again, a personal thank you. And I would also say a thank you on behalf of the cult. So that's all I got, man. But no, I appreciate you in many ways.
How was I gotta say? So we'll this circle is gonna keep going, and then I'll wrap it up. Don't worry. But as you would say, it is a two-way street. I remember one of our private conversations where you asked me if I thought you were 13 or 14% body fat, and we settled on 13.7 after about an hour deliberation. But I was gonna say I want to share one of our things that we did outside of Iron Culture. Those phenomenal 2019, right? I remember all the photos, the fantastic shape that you came in, how you emulated the Frank Zane pose when you're in Hawaii, and then you came down. But one of my best memories, we're talking about the very, like, you know, shout out like Chip Conrad, Randall Stropson, like just so many different things. But one of my fondest memories was after that back got blown out, where we had a great training session. I remember that at shout out Untamed Strength, Alan Thrall, all those sorts of things. And then we went and got Thai food, which is a very simple thing to do with Chip. But just how pleasant all of it was, rather how enjoyable, how memorable it was. The simple moments became memorable. And that to me is notable, just in the sense that everything felt right, like the conversation was flowing, what we were doing, like we believe. And those are like some of the fondest things, which seems like such a weird memory to bring up, but you know exactly what I mean, where we're just walking, just chilling, or like after your competition. I remember we had like a conversation in the parking lot where after we met up with 3DMJ, it was like for like an hour or something, right? Just chilling. Like those are some of the things, to your point, the Toronto trip, that I remember and also cherish, because it is truly the human connections. And I think that's why we understand that with Iron Culture, that we place that emphasis, right, on the history and also the culture, tethered then to the science. So no, as you would say, Eric, it is a two-way street, my friend.
Love it.
And I'll end it because that's what we do. And now you guys are going to be ending it. I want to thank just once again, not only the Erics, but also the Iron Culture community. It has meant so much to me. It has been an immense privilege co-hosting this over the last 6 years. I want to just say that because when I began writing it, and I had to think, I'm like, how long has it? I'm like, 6 years. I'm like, holy. So there is, and I think it's a testament once again to the power of the cult, where everything else, like forget Instagram, like I'm joking about that, but everything else fell by the wayside. But I looked forward to, you know, every single week. And I believe not only in the mission statement that we did, but also the mission statement of the future of Iron Culture. And it makes me very excited for the future. And I like to see that continuation, because I do look, and this is maybe, you know, a little bit of that arrogance creeping in, but Iron Culture as a whole is a very necessary force, a good force in the fitness industry. So I just want to thank every single person that has been involved in it, that has listened to any episode, that left a comment. Doesn't matter, positive, negative, 5 stars, 0 stars. It really doesn't matter. So this one is for you. And speaking of which, you could go ahead, leave a comment on YouTube. You could go ahead and leave a rating and review on iTunes. It does seem to help us out. Shout out Dr. RayGun, Australia, for that latest perfect send-off, quite frankly, review, which was almost serendipitous that it came. Australia, what you're saying, Helms, we're talking about Waterworld. It was like the perfect review, but that's what I mean. The cult truly gets it. They listen to all these episodes, so nothing but respect. I will say typically people leave 5 stars, but it is up to your own discretion what you'll give. We're back every single Monday from now until the end of time. We'll catch you in that next episode. Until next time.